Hello, it's Carly McAvoy, and I'm doing some work to help you prepare for your verbal fraction test. This first part of your test will ask you either which is greater or which is less of two values. And so some of those are easier than others. When you have two fractions that you're comparing that have the same denominator, you should simply compare the numerators. So here we're saying 6/11 compared with 9/11. Well, if I have 11 parts and I have 6 parts of those, or if I have 9 parts, obviously I have more of those total parts if I have 9. So in this case, the 9/11 is greater, and the 6/11 would be less. So if they have the same denominator, you're just comparing the numerators. So which is the greater value of 3/5 and 1/5? Well, this has 3 parts and this has 1 part. If you think about something with 5 parts, and I would like to divide these evenly, but I may not. If those are 5 equally divided parts, then if I have 3/5 shaded compared to 1/5, which one is the greater fraction? Well, obviously the one that has more parts shaded is the greater fraction. So 3/5 is greater and 1/5 is less. So go ahead and do these last two. It doesn't matter how big your denominators get. It's easy if you're just looking at the numerators. Here we have more parts shaded here, so that's greater, and less parts shaded here, so that's less. And over here we have fewer parts shaded than this one, so that's less and that's greater. So if you're comparing two fractions with the same denominator, look at the numerators. In the next part, if you're comparing fractions with the same numerators, then you compare the denominators. So if my numerators are the same, in this case I have 5 for both the numerators here, then I'm just looking at the denominators. And so I'm saying, well, what's greater, 5/11 or 5/7? Well, here I'm missing 6 parts. Here I'm missing just 2 parts. So every time I'm missing more parts, that's going to be a smaller fraction. I've only got 5/11. If you think about half of 11 is 5.5. So I'm just shy of half of that amount. Half of 7 is 3.5. So I have more than half of that. So this is the lesser fraction, and this is the greater fraction. All I have to do is look at the denominators. The smaller denominator is going to be the greater fraction because I have fewer parts missing there. Here I have 3/5 and 3/20. Here I'm missing 17 parts. I'm only missing 2 parts here. So I'm missing a lot more, and that's going to be the lesser value, and the greater fraction is going to be the one that has the smaller denominator. So I'm looking at the smaller denominator when the numerators are the same. So maybe take a second to do these without my help. The numerators are the same, so you're just comparing the denominators. And the way I think about it is how many parts would be missing here. Here we have missing parts, 37 missing parts compared to 87. So this one is, which one? It's the greater one because it's the smaller number, and this is the lesser fraction. Here we're looking for the denominator with the smaller value. That's going to be the greater fraction, missing 3 parts as compared to missing 8 parts. So this is going to be the greater fraction, and this is going to be the lesser fraction. What if you're comparing fractions with no similarities? In other words, look at our fractions here. They don't have the same numerators, they don't have the same denominators. In that case, you can try changing them to the same denominator. Sometimes it's very easy. You see how 5 could be made into tenths? That's a skill you've already practiced. If I made 3/5 into tenths, I'd be saying 5 times 2 is 10, so 3 times 2 is 6. And I'm really then comparing the same denominator, which is what we did up in the top. And if you have the same denominator, then you can easily see which one's the greater and which one's the lesser fraction. Here, it's a little harder to do in your head if you're using this example where we're changing them to the same denominator. Because 4 and 6 both go into 12, but you kind of have to do the conversions of both and hold on to that information in your head and then compare. You could do that though. You can change them both into 12s. 6 times 2 is 12, so 2 times 5 is 10. 4 times 3 is 12, and so 3 times 3 is 9. And once we do that, we can see the greater fraction is this one, and this is the lesser one. Another way to think about it is what's missing here? I'm missing 1/6, and here I'm missing 1/4. What's bigger, 1/6 or 1/4? Well, 1/6 is smaller than 1/4. So I'm missing a smaller piece, which means I have a greater fraction, because what I have is I'm not missing very much of that. And so it's harder to see. It's one of those things you have to practice. But if I had 6, so I'd make a 6, and then I make this. And I had 5 of those 6 shaded. Now if I had a 3/4, make a half, and then each of those. 3/4, you see how a 1/4 is greater than a 6? You can tell by my picture 1/6 is smaller than 1/4. And it is a crude picture, but still you should be able to see, I'm missing a smaller chunk. So this is the bigger fraction, the 5/6, the larger, greater fraction, I should say. And then 3/4 is missing a bigger chunk, so it's the lesser fraction. So that's kind of there's some thought that goes on there, but you can get better at it if you keep practicing it. What about 1/3 and 2/5? Again, you can think about what's missing, but that's pretty hard. It'd be easier here probably to change it into 15ths. And then that would be 3 times 5 is 15, so 5/15ths. And that's 5 times 3, so 6/15ths. And you can see the greater fraction and the lesser fraction. And I don't think I have any this hard on your verbal test, because I want you to be able to do it in your head. So I'm not looking for the real complicated ones, but I want to show you that you can get more complicated and not do a lot of work to do that. If you're comparing fractions with no similarities, if you don't want to find a common denominator, you can also try comparing them to 1/2. So in other words, 1/3 is definitely less than 1/2. But 5/8, well, half of 8 would be 4. So this is more than 1/2. So this one's greater and this one's lesser. So if you can just look at, whoops, I kind of got that crooked, sorry. If you can just look at their comparison to 1/2, that sometimes works. This is more than 1/2, this is less than 1/2. That's all I need to know. What is this one? Well, half of 16 would be 8. So this is more than 1/2. And 2/9 is less than 1/2. So this is the greater fraction and this is the lesser fraction. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell. This 5/6 and 2/3, again, I would go back to thinking about it this way. If you're missing 2/3, let me just do 2/3 up here because I already got the picture up here. 2/3, well, if I did thirds, you see 2/3 is even a bigger chunk missing than 1/3 is a bigger chunk than 1/4, and my drawing is pretty poor there, but I can see that I'm only missing 1/6 here, so I'm pretty close to finishing, whereas here I'm missing one part, and so I can change that into denominators that match, or I could just think about it, reason it through this way. I'm missing a smaller chunk and I'm missing a bigger chunk. If I'm missing a bigger chunk, it's a smaller fraction or lesser value than if I have a greater one. These are tricky, the last part. The first part and the second part, not too bad. The third and fourth part are trickier. You need to practice to get good at those. Okay, have a great day. I'll see you next time.